Hi guys, in today's video I'm going to share my very first update of my Vanguard portfolio performance of 2021. Make sure you watch right till the end as I'm going to share the total rate of return since inception, which is truly mind-blowing. First of all, let me just introduce myself. My name's Gary. I run the channel Ftse Your Finance, where I talk about investing, property and the journey towards financial independence. If this sounds like something you may wish to hear a little more about, don't forget you can hit that subscribe button below. So it's been a month already since I last shared my portfolio update. I'm going to go through all of the funds I hold in both my stocks and shares ISA and my SIPP, both with Vanguard. Before we get started, I'm just going to speak about a few of the things that may have affected the markets over the last month. Three main things really. The first one, of course, that actually the day after I made my last portfolio update, the Brexit deal was finally agreed. Regardless to whether or not you leave or remain, I'm sure everyone's happy that at least we finally got some sort of agreement and we know which direction we're working towards. Secondly, obviously the COVID vaccination is still being rolled out. The latest article that I just read actually said almost 2 million vaccinations have been made in the last week. And then finally, the inauguration of the new president of the United States of America, Joe Biden. Whether or not this was pure coincidence, but this led to some of the markets having the highest ever closing values. Before I get into today's video, please let me just say this is not financial advice. I'm just sharing the funds that I choose to use that suit my risk preference. Okay, so let's get started with my portfolio. So first of all, we're going to start in my stocks and shares ISA. So the very first fund that I hold in my ISA is the Emerging Markets Stock Index Fund. Last month, you will see that made up over 1.67% of my portfolio. This month, it's increased slightly. It now makes up 1.71%. Last month, it was up 2.15%. This month, it's up a massive 9.68%. So it's performed really fantastic. I only hold a tiny amount of this as emerging markets are seen as quite a risky investment, but it's an area that I see a potential of growth in, so I choose to invest some money into it. And then finally, since inception, which was September 2019, the fund is up 28.87%, which is fantastic. So on to the next fund I hold. It's the Ftseal World High Dividend Yield. Hence the name. This is a fund that tracks companies that pay good dividends each year. Last month, it made up 6.84% of my total portfolio. This month, it's gone down slightly to 6.75% of my overall portfolio. The good news is I've now had 2 months in a row of that fund being up, as that fund has been struggling a lot since the drops back in March. Last month it made me 0.28%. This month it's made me a much more impressive return of 4.33%. However, for the overall rate of return since inception, this fund is still ever so slightly down at 0.07%. The next fund I hold is the S&P 500 ETF. Last month it made up 39.86% of my overall ISA portfolio. This month it's gone up. It's up to 41.51% as I chose to put my monthly payment into the S&P. Still all green so far. Last month it made me 1.59%. This month it's had a better month. It's up 1.86%. The overall rate of return for this fund since inception is now 19.68%. So again, it's truly fantastic. The next fund I hold is the Ftseal World ETF. Again, as I'm sure the name gives away, this is a world tracker fund that tracks companies all over the globe. Last month it made up 51.05% of my overall ISA portfolio. This month it's slightly decreased to 49.11%. Last month it was up 1.97%, but this month it's up 2.94%. This gives me an overall rate of return since inception of a very, very impressive 36.1%. And then the final fund that I hold in my ISA just before we move on to my SIPP is the ESG Developed World All Cap Equity Index Fund. This is the most recent fund that I've introduced to my portfolio. Again, it is a world fund, but this time in developed countries, and the ESG part means that it's a socially responsible fund. Last month it made up only 0.58% of my overall portfolio. This month it's gone up to 0.93% of my portfolio. Last month that fund was up 3.54%. This month it's up 3.03%. So overall, every single fund in my ISA is up both last month and this month, which is very, very good news. Of course, with everything going on in the world right now, who knows what the next few months or even next few years hold, but right now the portfolio is performing well and all of the funds are in the green, which is great news. The overall rate of return for the ESG fund is 9.03%. So next up, we're going to move on to into my SIPP, which is a self-invested personal pension. I am a director of a limited company, so I make payments into my SIPP directly from my company. If you're like me and you run your own company, it will definitely be worth speaking to your accountant about potentially doing this, as there are certain benefits for doing it this way. So the first fund I hold in my SIPP is again the ESG Developed World All Cap Equity Index Fund. Last month that made up 55% of my SIPP. This month it's up to 60.86% of my SIPP. Last month that fund made me 3.11%. This month it's made me 2.73%. You may be asking, well, why are those figures not the same? That's because the money goes into my pension at different times to when my money goes into my ISA. Since inception, that fund has now returned me 10.19%. Next up is the Life Strategy 100. Last month that made up 45% of my SIPP. This month it makes up 39.14% of my SIPP. Last month it made me 1.99%. This month it's made me 3.53%. So since inception, that's an overall rate of return of 15.4% for the Life Strategy 100. Next up, we're going to go on to the overall rate of return of my whole portfolio together for both last month and this month. So first of all, last month I was up 1.7%. This month I'm up 3%. I can't imagine there's many places that I could make 3% in a month. However, please do bear in mind that money can go down as well as up. Next up, my overall rate of return since inception back in September 19 is 34.02%. How incredible is that? I am now getting quite a significant figure in my ISA and SIPP, so the money that this is now returning me is a serious sum of money, and it's truly amazing seeing my money grow and be almost in this sort of compound building machine that it's becoming. It's the power of investing over time and letting your money grow and work for you. So now I've shared my portfolio, I'm just going to go over a few questions that have been brought up in past videos. I wanted to get my portfolio out of the way first for all the guys that were just logging in to see that. The first thing someone has asked me in the past is that I am very heavily weighted in stocks, and they are completely right. And they were asking, why are you so heavily weighted? Isn't this quite risky? Yes, it is quite risky. However, what I must let you know is I diversify in many other parts of my life. So for example, I own 5 rental properties. I also hold a large amount of cash and low interest savings. I also invest in peer-to-peer lending. I have multiple businesses paying me income streams. So there are many more streams of revenue and investments that are paying me, and obviously not all of them are as risky as this one. This account is very much a long-term view. So I've potentially got 20, 30, even 40 years to ride out any crashes in the market. Some people ask me, would I consider introducing bonds into the portfolio? Possibly. Is something I'll introduce in around 10 or 15 years time. So if you have any more questions about my portfolio and you'd like to find out why I do something in a particular way, please leave them in the comments box below. I'm always happy to answer any questions and be as open as I possibly can. Apart from that, I hope to see you on another video very soon. Take care, guys.